Athlete's Lifestyle Assignment 2, and it's due in on the 3rd of December, so that's coming up pretty soon. Here's the criteria that we're addressing, so P2, M2 and D2, and then finally we're looking at P3. So if you go into the task, what it asks us to do is to look at a range of appropriate behaviours, and in the first case it asks us to describe the range of appropriate behaviours considering the impact on the athletes and others means friends, family, fans, spectators, etc. The merit criteria looks for you to explain the behaviour and the impact, and then finally the distinction asks you to justify, so argue why the appropriate behaviour is required and what's the benefits behind it. So just down here, I don't know why this is bold, but we'll turn it off bold. Here are some of the appropriate behaviours, and I can show you what I've done so far. So if I'm looking at my assignment, I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to show you task 1. So I've got appropriate behaviours here. If I go into here and I zoom in a bit so we can actually see it, what I've done is I've picked out 5 appropriate behaviours. I'll go through those in a minute, but the first one I've done is conduct during competition and trainings, and the focus is respect for peers and others, and I'll show you where that comes up on the brief in a minute. First of all, I've just described what respect for peers and others is, and the importance of it, and then I've gone on to explain it and link to examples. So in this case I've talked about if you don't respect peers and others, this is the impact of it, and we talked about Nick Kyrgios. And then I've talked about appropriate behaviours for respecting peers, so where Roger gave an interview after Murray'd lost the 2012 Wimbledon final and broke down into tears, and how Roger shared some words with him which kind of helped Murray get through that period. And then finally I've talked about I've justified the importance of respecting others. So the first thing I said is I'll talk about this benefit, which is to increase your fan base. Then I've gone on and said I'm going to talk about the second benefit, which is having respect of your peers. And then finally I said I've gone on to discuss how respect for your peers can help increase sponsorship and financial gain. So I've justified the importance of respect for peers in that setting. What I would then go on to do, reduce the size a little bit, is I would then go on and do conduct during games, during competition and training, and the focus here is adherence to rules. I've then got, again, conduct during competition and training, but it's about equal opportunities, so the same process. And then finally I would look at there's 2 more: role models, enhancing the status of the sport, and then role models, increasing participation for all. How those appropriate behaviours, so first of all describe them, explain them and put some examples in, and then justify the importance of it. And then you'll need to follow the same format that I've done for this one here. Then if we go back to the brief, the second task asks you to look at the coping strategy. So coping with a hectic, varied lifestyle is essential for sporting success. In the second section of your presentation, you're required to consider both appropriate, positive and inappropriate behaviours displayed by athletes. You've been asked to identify and describe strategies that may be used by athletes to help them deal with 3 different situations. I've actually done 4. Make sure you relate these to these recommendations to your athletes. So if we come back to this and we look at part 2 of my presentation, here I am. So I'm talking about, first of all, I've identified Dan Evans. So I wrote this bit here. I said what Dan Evans did. So he basically took cocaine. He's got a very party boy lifestyle. So I've described that there. But here I've actually just given a brief overview of what changing a lifestyle is as a coping strategy. And then finally, I've said why this strategy is appropriate to Dan Evans and how it will work for him. And I would apply that to 4 different athletes. So again, I've gone on to Roger Federer. I just started this one, changing routine. So I said that Roger Federer over 2015 and 16 hardly played any tennis because his body was worn down. So what I've then gone on to do is talk about how Roger's changed his routine, reducing his amount of training and competitions to be able to make sure he's his body's recuperated to make sure he plays those big tournaments. What I should do, which I haven't finished yet, is what I'd actually describe. I've made a mistake here. It should say change in routine. I should actually describe what change in routine is. Right. The same again here. Okay, so I've got mentoring and coaching, and I'm talking about Kennedy, and I should be talking about, first of all, what mentoring and coaching is, which we've done in class. Then I'd say what Kennedy did, and then I'd say why mentoring and coaching is an appropriate strategy for Kennedy. And then finally I'd do the same for Wayne Rooney for one-to-one discussions, if that makes sense. So that's basically your assignment in a nutshell. What I'll do is I'll PDF this so you can see it on Moodle, but also this video will be there for you to walk through and see it yourself.